Welcome to the Realty Plus Masterclass webinar on behalf of the entire Realty Plus team. I am Sapna Srivastava, editor for Realty Plus magazine, and the technology partner for today's webinar is digitalmarketinguniversity.com. A very pertinent topic that we are discussing today, which is, how the city should be in the future. We have a very eminent set of speakers which will be talking on this topic, deliberating on how our city should be shaping up. We have seen the health crisis, the environment crisis, and it's high time that we do something about how we are building our built environment. But before we go on to the discussion, I would like to share a brief introduction of Realty Plus with you all. Realty Plus is a publication from Exchange for Media and Business World Group, and we have been part of real estate vertical for more than 16 years now. So it's a long and very credible journey that we have had with our monthly publication, which is the Realty Plus magazine, and is available in e-edition as well as print edition. And we have been for past 16 years covering all aspects of real estate, building, construction, finance, legal, everything to do with the development part of real estate. Apart from this monthly publication, we also have yearly product which is called the Realty Plus Coffee Table Books, and they are collector's edition, which every year we bring out on specific topics, such as the top luxury projects of India, top affordable housing projects of India, top 100 developers of India. We recently did a coffee table book on building material brands, and also the marvels of real estate, which was our last coffee table book on the real estate projects from across the country. Our eighth and forthcoming coffee table book is the Super CXO, which is is already garnering a lot of attraction from the industry professionals. And here in this Super CXO coffee table book, we will be featuring top 100 influencers from the real estate segment. So a very interesting coffee table book product we have. And another very interesting product that we are soon launching is Realty Plus Technology Digibook, which is the Realty Plus Tech Titans. And here we will be enlisting PropTech companies, technology startups, and organizations from real estate fraternity who are proactively adopting technology in their operations. So these are the people whom we call the Tech Titans, and we will be bringing them all in this one book. These were some of the publications that we have, and we are launching soon. Apart from this, we have events called Realty Plus Conclave and Excellence Awards, which in physical form we have been doing in 6 cities of the country. And we are also coming with the same event, Realty Plus Conclave and Excellence Awards, on a virtual platform in July, which we are doing for Gujarat region. And I promise you this is going to be a one-of-a-kind event, because for the first time we'll be using a virtual platform to create a conference and a awards evening as if it's a physical event. We also, as you know, we are all in a digital environment nowadays, and therefore Realty Plus has also created an initiative called Realty Plus Digital Connect. Under the umbrella of Digital Connect, we have products like the Realty Plus Masterclass webinar, which we have one today. Also the Realty Plus Real Talk series, where we do video interviews with industry experts from varied segments of real estate, construction, environments, and finance and legal. We also have an e-newsletter which goes out to the entire database every morning with the latest news of the sector, expert opinions, and interviews. Apart from this, we are very active on the social media as well, where we, this is the platforms such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, that we stay connected with our readers, our stakeholders, our participants, our sponsors. And this is the medium where we do a lot of innovative promotional activities for our products. So some very interesting products and activities that I just enlisted from Realty Plus, and this was just a snapshot of the products that we are doing and will be doing in future. In case anyone would need to know more about us, you can go to our website, realtyplusmac.com, or be in touch with our publisher and business head, Ms. Tripti Kedia. Her information is right there on the screen. Now coming back to the Realty Plus webinar that we have today. And the topic for today's webinar is Designing for Resilience, Collaborate, Rethink, Redesign Future Cities. A very pertinent topic, and we have, I'm very glad that we have speakers today which are from across the cities of India, from Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Pune, Gujarat, and they are all experts there in their own fields. So we will also have a Q&A panel later where along with me will be joining Mr. Anil Beejawat, CEO of Ceramics, and Jinal Palkhiwala, Managing Director in Mobile Doors. But before I introduce them and welcome them on the panel, I would like to welcome our moderator of the session, Mr. A. Shankar, who is the Chief Operating Officer and Head for Strategic Consulting at JLL India for India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. In fact, he's an architect and planner and has more than 20 years of experience in all segments of real estate, from property development, infrastructure, urban design, urban infrastructure, urban governance, resource mobilization, and he has been advising his clients on all these various aspects of real estate. So a very warm welcome to you, Mr. Shankar. Thank you for being here with us. I now hand it over to you to take forward the conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sapna, for your introduction. Good evening, everyone. I welcome the panelists here. We have wide, powerful, extremely talented, extremely influential, extremely eminent speakers with us today. I will introduce them on an alphabetical order. First, I have Mr. Amar Tendulkar, Chief of Design and Sustainability, Mahindra Lifespace Developers Limited. He has got more than 24 years of experience in architecture and real estate development. Amar is responsible for complete design management to quality deliverable of multiple projects. Welcome, Amar. Next, I have Kartikeya Sarabhai, founder and director, Center for Environment Education. He has served on many committees set up by Ministry of Environment and Forest and Ministry of Human Resource Development for Government of India. Welcome, Mr. Sarabhai. Then we have Manoj Choudhary, Director, Edifice Consultants. He currently runs the healthcare and urban design verticals and also oversees business development. Welcome, Manoj. Then we have architect Nayan Raheja, who is a passionate entrepreneur and has been a growth driver for bringing Raheja developers into a new era. Under his aegis, the company has seen a change in business strategy from mid-level to luxury housing. Welcome, Nayan. Next is Pratima Joshi, founder, member, and executive director, Shankar Associates. Pratima recognizes the issues around provision of safe access to water, sanitation, social housing, waste management, and so on and so forth. I think we need to have a lot of information from her on data as well. Welcome, Pratima. Last but not the least, Mr. Sushil Mohta, Chairman, Merlin Group and President, CREDAI, West Bengal. Mr. Mohta has been in real estate industry for the last 3 decades. He's the founding member of CREDAI India. CREDAI, we all of us know, is an umbrella organization of real estate industry in India. So I once again welcome all the speakers. So before we hear from them, I want to just highlight a couple of points. One, with the ongoing outbreak of pandemic and the world coming close to standstill now, and I think some of the cities are resuming with about 10, 15, and 30% in the near future, effective city management across a lot of these countries is becoming a very Herculean task because cities were not designed for such crisis. It was not designed for such crisis, and the management is becoming very, very difficult. However, long-term impacts of corona on cities are difficult to predict, but however, in near future, we can plan accordingly or design our cities accordingly because cities will continue to be the engines of growth, and it will never die, because cities are going to be the drivers for the Indian economy or the economy of the entire world. I wanted to just go back to the history and trace how cities behaved during this pandemic situation, especially the impact of diseases. So I was given to understand the cholera and the yellow fever epidemics in the 19th century was the instrumental factor for the modern urban sanitation system. So the underground sanitation, which we are talking about in New York, the cholera was instrumental in the sanitation system. So what it really means is that we adapt to the circumstances whenever we face with difficulties. Also, I've been reading some articles. People are talking about how the regulations came into effect, especially the housing regulations of light, air, the introduction of the gap between the buildings. All of that happened due to some diseases. So I think the housing regulation happened because of the respiratory diseases during that particular point in time. And all of us know that World Health Organization is also advocating a lot of these design-related aspects, because of the tuberculosis is related to crowding, ventilation, and all of that. So all these design elements are in a way related to the diseases which we have encountered in the last century or so. The severity of these illness definitely are putting us through a difficult situation, and that is why the urban planners, designers, engineers, public health, city managers are coming together. So all these times we've been witnessing all the departments were working in silos. Now it is good that everybody is acting towards to a common goal, that is dealing with COVID. Again, diseases and disease controls have had a massive impact on urban design. Across the world, a lot of initiatives as far as design is concerned. And also in India, we are witnessing large amount of buildings being converted into makeshift hospitals. So during this COVID period, we've been seeing stadiums, hotels, lodges, private hospitals, everything has been converted into makeshift hospitals, because we never anticipated something like this is going to come. And also recently, all of us are aware, at least few of us are aware, that the 100 smart cities which is being planned in India, only few cities have taken up a lot of these initiatives. In the recent past, during this COVID times, most of these integrated command control centers across 40-45 smart cities been converted into the COVID war room. So it's been effectively used by various authorities, various officials in the city, including urban planners in the department, to health inspectors, medical professionals. All of them looked at this command control center as a war room during this pandemic situation. Next is very important is what is going to happen post-COVID. So, I mean, we don't know how long this is going to continue, but however, there is going to be an end. Post-COVID, a lot of people, I had a lot of interactions with a lot of city officials. We at JLL, we work a lot with city officials, and we are one of the consultants who've been advising on cities, on the smart cities. And currently we have been advising on the post-COVID measures as cities should enforce in their city development process. So what is happening is, as I was highlighting some of those new initiatives which are coming in near future, there is a mindset difference which is going to come in a big way, which is once we come into the normalcy, people will be using their personal vehicles. there is going to be resistance for the public transportation system because of this crowd and social distancing. What are we going to do about that? So a lot of cities globally are planning for wider footpaths, walkable street, focusing on pedestrianization, additional cycle lanes. So all of these new initiatives are coming at a city level. So again, many cities are talking about compact cities, new ideas of, I think I was reading somewhere, people are talking about 15-minute city, where most of the daily needs are in a walking distance. You can do everything within 15 minutes. So, and walkable cities concept is coming in a big way. When they deal with the open spaces, how are we going to deal with open spaces? Because a lot of people use these parks and open spaces for day-to-day activities, whether people will be using them because of this social distancing norms in near future. A lot of design solutions are coming in our way. How are we going to design these open spaces in near future? Innovative and unusual steps driven by out-of-the-box kind of a thinking is required. And we have the extreme panelists here. We know the urban India population, roughly 1/3 of India's population is urban. And by 2050, more than 50% of our Indian population is going to be urban. So urbanization is on the rise. However, in the first time, the reverse migration is happening at this point in time. So we need to address that issue. So are we talking about cities growing in full swing, what we've witnessed in the last 4 or 5 decades, or cities are going to change, or are we going to rethink how cities need to be positioned? At this juncture, it is highly important to reflect upon how healthy or safe our cities will be to function as a normal city, because we have seen this COVID as an important milestone, or we are at a crossroads. I think we have an opportunity, especially the Indian cities have got an opportunity to leapfrog and catch up with many other cities globally. So with that note, I would like to interact with the panelists. I would like to start with Amar. Amar, just to share your thoughts on your perspectives of how cities are going to evolve in near future and your introductory comments on this particular subject. Over to you, Amar.
Thank you, Shankar, and good evening, everyone again. It was a fantastic, kind of a mood setting by you, Shankar, for the entire conversation that we have. And you very well said that, 15-minute city, pedestrian city, and, I'll tell you, both the concepts have kind of co-evolved together. I remember, when I was working with Joshi, there was a lot of focus in terms of the urban planning, urban design. We were doing the Bandra Kurla complex project, Kharghar project during those days. And a lot of influence had come from the Corbusiers, thinking about the cities. Whereas, in Mumbai, we had got a lot of influence towards the entire Navi Mumbai's development, New Mumbai's development, which was where the master plan was developed by Korea. And there was both these philosophies, there was a constant debate that which philosophy amongst both is the kind of a right philosophy. It's a pedestrian versus motorable. In 1960s, when Chandigarh was getting designed, Nehru took the approach that city has to be futuristic and called Corbusier, and Corbusier designed the city where the cars will run by 60 miles per hour. That is about, 100 kilometers per hour. So with that speed of the life, keeping in mind that city was designed. And then everybody started criticizing that, okay, this city is not Indian city particularly. It's not, people are not communicating with each other. It's creating the society which is fragmented kind of a thing. So having said that, if we have not progressed that fast, we can't blame the designer. It was designed for certain kind of a speed. Whereas now understanding all those aspects, and when we started designing the cities of Kharghar and BKC, both these aspects were in the mind. So the marriage of the motorable city versus the pedestrian, both have to be together. The micro cities have to be, as you correctly said, has to be into the 15 minutes kind of a walkable distance. Whereas yes, city also requires, that buzz of the top end of the motors, urban network, working spaces, all those things. So it has to be the marriage of the both, I can say. Now, particularly, I am telling you about COVID. I agree that COVID will put a lot of concerns in terms of the health growth of the health facilities, sustainability, going back to the nature, and all those kind of things. But having said that, cities are actually principally they are not designed for this kind of crisis. I mean, the crisis can be any crisis. In 40s, when the World War was happening, entire London was inside the tubes, right? So having said that, we can't design for the World War to happen. I mean, on the other day, last week, I was watching this movie. What was that movie? Arrival, where the aliens come. So you never know, probably in the next 15 years, aliens might also come. So can we say that we design the cities, know that aliens are coming and we have to protect ourselves from aliens? So we can't design. What is happening is we have to design the cities, most importantly, going back to the roots. We should not break our links from the nature, Mother Nature. And if we design in the comprehensively to the Mother Nature, complementary to the Mother Nature, I think that is the best way to the live. I mean, Gandhiji also has said, go back to go to your villages, go up, Gaon ki taraf jao. Gaon ki taraf jao, it does not mean that you do not progress. You progress, but keep those good things of the villages, good things going towards the nature, within the communities or within the cities that you live in. That's what my thought is.
Thanks, Amar. Can we move on to Mr. Kartikeya?
Thank you, Shankar.
Yes.
It's great to be here to explore with all of you what the future cities will be. I think what COVID has really done is it has very strongly reinforced some of the trends which we were thinking about for some time. These were trends in resilience, trends in sustainability, trends in the smart cities, and the circular economy. Now, all these were necessary. We are talking about climate change. We were talking about air pollution. If you remember, not very long ago, the main concern in places like Delhi and even Ahmedabad was the air pollution, the fact that we couldn't breathe in this city. And now suddenly you're finding that because of an enforced change, because of COVID, suddenly the skies have cleared. From North India, from Jalandhar, you can go up on the roof and see the Himalayas. And people didn't even realize that you could see it. So I think there is this change. Now, what are those changes which are required? And to my mind, some of our speakers have already said it, you said it, that I think we need to question, first of all, this whole issue of transport. That is it okay for people in a place like Bombay or Delhi or someone to spend maybe 2 hours to 3 hours a day just moving from place A to place B to get to work? We have found ourselves that so much of travel, I would have done, let's say in the last 3 months, I have not done, but I can still say that I have met many of those people. Maybe 60% of the work I've been able to do without that travel, international and local. So I think we are all recognizing the power. We are having an experiment just now in villages, 10 villages, where we have taught everyone how to be on a Zoom conference and how to mute their mics. And we had an IIM professor suddenly talk to villagers about appropriate technologies. So this is really showing us the digital power of how things have come together. So my sense is that you're going to have the new city where you work at two scales. On the one hand, you will strengthen community. You will have many more things within walkable distance. Amar spoke about micro cities, but you will have smaller areas. The Gandhiji's village concept. You will have a smaller area where you can walk, where you can do things, and perhaps I foresee that you will have a grid of offices. So I join an office. It's not the same as a shared office because I join my local grid and I immediately get connected to my office. If you see, maybe the TV screens are put in such a way that I continuously see them, not only when I want to talk to them, but I physically see them. So the grid office, so that for most of my needs, I will be able to do it locally. And then you have certain things which are at the urban level. I think entertainment is going through a major change. I now wonder whether we should just get ourselves a bigger system rather than going into a theater, a movie theater. What is the advantage of that? I think shopping is going through changes. We are doing mail order, but I think I want to emphasize here how the informal sector in India plays such a critical role And I think we have to talk also about the transformation of the informal city in the smart city. And I think what's going to happen is that the back end of supply to the informal sector is going to be very modern, and the front end, which is the lariwala or gallawala, might be branded, all you know. Maybe you will have a Geo Lari, I don't know. But just like what Amul did, Amul transformed by letting the person keep the buffalo in the old way, and yet you had a very modern dairy, and you connected the two. Indian cities need to connect between the tradition and the community and the large things. And I think that's where we are heading, and where we need to go. Waste management will have to also be largely handled locally. I think biodegradable waste can be easily done. Decentralized parks, reconnecting to nature, more and more shared community facilities as a nature. So I think this is a time of transformation, and I think the discussions like just now are critical for us to evolve a model which is suitable for India. I think the Indian model is not. I think I agree with you that we need to leapfrog in technology, but we also have to remember that our roots and our way of solving it, maybe it can lead the world in what those solutions are. So thank you for those. This is the introduction comment. We'll make more later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sarabhai. Next, we'll move on to Manoj. Manoj, yeah, unmute and share your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Shankar and Swapna, to invite me in this prestigious forum. I will give you a perspective in terms of what is actually happening on ground, because that is more important. Because honestly speaking, we are all deliberating and we are all thinking about what next. So no one has an answer to it. We are all contemplating, how to go about addressing this post-pandemic situation globally. It is not a problem for India alone, it is a problem across the globe. Luckily, we are associated with one of the development in Navi Mumbai, which is planned by CITCO, and they're coming up with an international corporate park. So there are two scenarios, post-COVID and pre-COVID. So we started this design pre-COVID, and then there was a lull when the COVID started, all the lockdown in this country. So before the COVID situation, we were all talking numbers. We are all talking in terms of the end clientele and how CITCO is more powerful and they don't care about the market. Everyone, whatever CITCO plans, everyone will come and buy it. Honestly speaking, post-COVID, everything changed. Even CITCO is thinking like a Norman developer, where they're thinking more on ground in terms of how they can connect to the entire development. So that is one positive change which I have seen, during this time, because the most of the enablers in this country or globally will be the public sector. Because when you're talking about urban planning or town planning and all this stuff, it is about the public sector. It is the government who has to take the initiative. So, which is very important parts. And we saw a very, very pleasant change where the client behaved pre-COVID and how they are behaving post-COVID. Though it is not post in India so far, but still, since we have started resuming office, everyone is saying that it is post-COVID. So the most important stretch which the client is now looking into is the wellness. No one talked about the wellness of people who are going to reside in this, big communities which everyone is planning. Second thing is participation. Now, Amar spoke about planning of New Bombay. Mr. Sarabhai spoke about the other initiative which the government is taking in terms of smart cities and all other proposals. No one spoke about the comfort of the people who are going to use that facility. Now we talk about principles which has been developed in European countries or American countries. Their climatic conditions allows that 15-minute walk. Is it possible in India? So that is some questions we need to address. Bicycling, okay, BKC, if you see, all the bicycling tracks are used by cars now. So how we make those bicycling work in India? So what should be the ideal width of our bicycling track. If you take the same dimension what the Americans or Europeans are taking, it will not work in India because our population is such, our footpath, whatever size you make, is always crowded. So we need to look into this, and there is a lot of study done by some of the Indian the government institution in terms of how to pedestrianize our cities. Bangalore is one example where you see a lot of development on pedestrianizing most of the areas, particularly in the MG Road area and the Museum Road area, which they have completely, turned around in terms of the intervention from the entire community. The other part is how we participate as far as the community as a whole is concerned. Now we have got the architects, we have got the urban designers and planner, which is new to most of the fraternity. Like architects were new to India. Architects are still called engineers, right? So similarly, we know that okay, developer, which is more known as a builder, then he became a developer. Now it is the private equity which is taking the place. So things are changing as the times are moving on. So participation is how we work collaboratively. Okay, if you have a master plan like New Bombay or Chandigarh, think what has the new enablers have done to their cities. Now everyone is designing cities in isolation. If you have 100, 200 acres or 500 acres, you are designing things in isolation. There is no connect to the outside world. I think that is something we need to look into when we are looking into new design. And this is something which we've experienced now. So when we were on the drawing board with Sitco, what we did that we've enabled close to around 12,000 crores of public infrastructure, which will be, catalyst for this development, which is very important. You have to think as a whole. You can't think in isolation. My development is no more there. It is our development is what the new present, philosophy of design is all about. Second thing is, well-being. Now, when we're talking about walk to work, now the one thing which the pandemic has kind of thrown in place is that connectivity. Now, we talk about CBDs. So you walk in one place, you live in one place, right? This is the theory in most of the CBDs. So CBDs is only about offices. When we did the study about Bandakulla, the failure points is because it is only talking about offices, very few residences to support the demand. So when we did MMRDA master planning, we did a mix other way around. We did 40% offices, 60% residential, so that the mix is balanced. People will always come to these places, but in case of any eventuality, that connectivity, staying close to your office is much more better, safer. Safety is also very important aspect when you look into this. So same principle we are taking into our development, where we are saying that there should be an even mix of all types of amenities in a community. You should have offices. What kind of offices? Because when we talk about offices, we have got our partners like JLL is, like Cushman Wakefield is a partner in terms of providing us the marketing requirement. Now, the first thing is that, okay, IT. IT is the first client. Are there no other clients we have? So post-COVID, things have changed. More than IT, it is the manufacturing industry which will be moving out. Everyone is in the frame of mind that a lot of Chinese companies will move out, and India will be providing them that land and all this thing. That is one perspective we looked into. And what will that happen? Manufacturing means you'll have their R&Ds, you'll have their offices. So that kind of demand will also be created. That is one. Second thing is that healthcare. No one talks about healthcare in a larger master plan. So even the healthcare, because a pandemic in India has opened out uh, a vacuum in our healthcare infrastructure. You see how all a city like Bombay, we don't beds to treat our patients. Right? We have to open up all our stadiums or exhibition spaces for the COVID hospital. Still, you don't have place. If someone is having a normal common cold, he doesn't have a place to go. This is situation of our healthcare in this country. So a lot of such activities will happen where government can only facilitate. So we need to provide incentives, lands, and all these things for those kind of institution to come and put up this facility. Second thing is when you are developing a complex, we concentrate residential, commercial. What are the ancillaries? Means you need to take care of the vendors. The so-called the street vendors, the hawkers, and all this thing. When you have a development, if you see Nariman Point or VKC, you still see hawkers and all the informal sector is there. Even our Prime Minister is proposing that having a vada pav stall or a samosa stall is a form of employment. So where will those people go? So when we talk about the new cities, I think it should be more inclusive of having all this kind of informal and formal participants, which will make the city vibrant. Second thing is how safe and how resilient is your development, which is also very important. Now, when we talk about safety, we talk about putting boundary, putting all the access control and all this. This is not about safety. This is only ensuring that was I am secured, you are not secured. That is the divide which you are creating. So anyone who can afford a secured place can be secured, and anyone who can't afford can't be secured. That line we have to change. So these are the few things which I feel is something which everyone is looking into when the planning is getting considered. We know there are smart city initiatives and lot many other things are happening, but this is more on the infrastructure side. We are not talking about the human value side. Means a new a millennial will look into future cities. So he demands certain requirement which we are not talking about. Now there was a very nice ad by Tata Motors, I think, when they had two art classes. The first art class were given to the parents, and they were given to choose their crayon colors and all this thing. And then the next set was given to the kids, very young kid. And after both of them finished their painting, so what was realized that the parents did everything very green, bright, and all this thing, and kids were doing it in dark, black, and gray shades. The thing is that if you we have taken toll on all the green infrastructure we had, what you're living for our future. So I think this is where the pandemic is going to make things change, make things look different. There is also one very important thing which the government is doing. I think Sarabhai sir will know, is that there is a proposal called rural urban, Rurban, where the government is trying to move that urban activity from a city level to a block level. And they have defined what is the demography. Means if it is in plains, if it is in a seashore, or if it is in the hills, they are defining the demography, and they are allocating the minimum budget which the government is trying to create for such urban centers is between 60 to 100 crores. It's not a small thing. 50 to 60 to 100 crores is a big real estate project in Bombay. So I'm saying that those are the initiatives which the government is doing, but unfortunately those initiatives are managed by the block officers. None of the urban designers or architects are participating in those proposals, because it's not in the cities, it is in the villages. So that is something which we need to look into. There are lot of initiative which the government has taken in terms of redoing the existing cities. So there is a lot of something called LAP and the town planning thing, which is getting proposed beyond smart cities, where they're inviting bids for consultants to participate in making those cities more sustainable. And one such is Banaras. That there is an inquiry in the market where they want to redo the entire town planning of the city. Now, these are the initiatives which there is already there, but I think the participation should be more focused to the real people who can make the difference. And the enabler should then participate in ensuring that whatever is the best required solution for that particular area should be looked into. So this is our take while working in this current situation.
Okay, thanks a lot, Manoj. Next, I'll move on to Nayan. Nayan, share your thoughts, initial thoughts.
Yes, thank you very much for having me here, and a very good evening to all the panelists and all the attendees on this forum. So, I think there are two ways to look at, how things are changing now. There is a short-term way of looking at things, and what are the trends that we are seeing as developers and architects. And there's also a long-term, which I am not sure we are allowed to predict at the moment, because we really don't know how things are going to progress, whether we're going to find a vaccine or a medicine or not. And I think that's largely going to change the long-term aspect of things. However, talking about the short-term aspect of things and the trends that we are seeing in the world around us and in the consumer space around us, So if I talk about real estate or development, presently we are seeing the poorest class of the people who are who are usually migrants. We are seeing them shifting back to villages. That's one. Second, we are seeing the people who are usually on rented accommodation in the cities. We are seeing that they are wanting to make an upshift to either affordable housing or mid-segment housing. The government is offering, some sort of SOPs in terms of reduced home loans, which is making people, helping people make that jump. The mid-segment people that we are seeing in this space are looking at moving to apartment housing or complexes where we have, instead of 2 BHKs, they're looking at 3 BHKs. 3 BHK people are looking at 4 BHKs, or possibly, having multi-purpose spaces, within their apartments, which can be used as a home office or so. At the same time, we're seeing a trend in, the luxury consumer space, where people are approaching us who are already residing in, some of our luxury apartments or, other developers. We're looking at moving up to bigger farmhouses or villa or independent floor kind of developments. So I think it stems from the psyche that, everybody has had time to think over the past 3 to 4 months on how to progress with their lives, what are the big changes that they want to, bring about. And I see that these are strong trends which are going on at the on ground. Apart from this, I don't know in the long term whether we are going to reach a space where we're going to have these walk to work concepts and the entire master planning of cities, whether it's appropriate to say that it's going to start getting changed now because of coronavirus. It's too early to say, but surely I think working from home has become a reality that all of us are part of now. And I think that is bringing a huge change, in the way things work. So I'm seeing already in the residential space of, when I talk about residential organized group housing, I can talk about some of the changes that we are bringing about and which we are starting to market now in the, in the market. So, for example, in the lobbies that we are doing up in apartment housings, we are looking at sanitization chambers, from where people sort of walk in before entering into any of the towers that they're doing. We've just recently made an order to Otis Lift for one of our housing projects, which is going to be touchless in the sense that there's going to be no buttons inside the lift. There are options of either app-based controls or touchscreen-based controls or a voice-based controls. I'm not getting into details of how that happens. Also, we are advertising sensor-based CP fittings. In the lobbies on every floor in the apartment housings, we are looking at providing some sort of plumbing points for having a hand wash outside, before people enter the homes, as well as providing shoe rack spaces so that, you don't need to take your shoes inside. So this is what we are doing, at least as a company, in the residential space of things. Apart from this, we are planning 2 other developments, which are a direct repercussion of the coronavirus. In the commercial space, we are looking at launching shop-cum-office plots. So instead of conventional shopping malls or high street retail sort of developments, we are looking at more segregated, independent plots, where people can just drive in without going into a basement. They can just park, get the, quickly buy whatever they need to and zip off. That's one of the products that we are looking at launching. We've already launched some of it in the market. There's also a farmhouse scheme that we are considering. This is again a direct repercussion of the coronavirus, where we are looking at doing 1-acre farmhouses on the edge of the city, 100% self-sustainable, whether in terms of electricity, water, garbage, complete self-sustenance in terms of the organic farming, food supplies, having an in-house fishery, apiculture. So net to net, you can say that you are completely cut off from the rest of the world. You can stay over there, just get a fast internet connection and run your businesses off from home. These are the changes. These are real changes. I'm not predicting any trends for the rest of the world. These are changes that we are making. These are the changes that people are buying into. And this is happening as we speak. So yeah, those are my 2 cents of the things that we are up to.
Thanks a lot, Nayan.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Pratima. Please share your initial thoughts.
very happy to be here on this panel. So I will bring in the perspective of the urban poor with whom we've been working for the last 27 years. I think one of the major things that the pandemic has really driven home is that the well-being of the city depends on the well-being of every citizen. I think the slums have been the most neglected lot till now. You know, if there was a fire outbreak or if, you know, there was any kind of disaster that struck a slum earlier, people would be sympathetic. You know, there would be some kind of makeshift arrangements made by the government to alleviate the problems. And then again, they would continue to remain neglected. But today, with the pandemic striking us, each and every house help or your driver or anybody who's coming from the informal settlements into your society, everybody is getting really worried. Is it safe to bring them? Are we going to be safe with them coming into our homes? Today, it has created a panic, a fear-like situation, and everybody is now really worried. I think for the government, this has been maybe some kind of an eye-opener, because the rate at which the pandemic is rising in slums, they suddenly find that they are not able to control it, they're not able to track, they're not able to monitor, because they've not really invested in data. And by data, I mean, you know, usable spatial data, which they need to really institutionalize. You know, we've been working in Maharashtra for the last 27 years, and we've been working in small and big municipal corporations, maybe 10 or 11 of them. And we find that this is a common problem which plagues every municipality or municipal corporation. They just don't have usable data. And which is one of the reasons why, you know, they've come out with solutions which probably don't work on the ground. Today, if you look at sanitation, if you just take sanitation alone, all the cities most of the time have been giving a solution which was like one glove fits all, giving them community toilets. Today, people living in slums, forget about social distancing. That is something that they are just not able to practice, because given the kind of crowded environment densities that we are talking about, that's not even a possibility. But there is this fear of going and using community toilets, which is really, really big. For us, this has been, you know, a situation where every day we're getting calls from the slum saying, can you help us? Can you give us material? Can we build a home toilet? Because we have been involved in the last 5 years under Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. We've been running a whole campaign called One Home, One Toilet in 7 cities of Maharashtra. And we've reached out to over 20,000 families with a household toilet. We've done this with the government. We've done this by being very data driven. We've mapped settlements. We've done, you know, a lot of intensive work of creating this database, and then getting the government to, you know, leverage this data, put in new sewerage lines so that more and more families can get connected to the city sewer networks. But what happens is, typically you have different government programs. You have the Swachh Bharat, you have the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, you have the Amrut Yojana, you have all these happening parallelly. You have all the departments in the government who are, you know, very focused on just their vertical. There's hardly any kind of communication that is happening between them. And so you find that convergence of schemes is just not happening because the data has never been owned by the government. I think this is something that you really now need to look at, because most cities are talking about housing for the poor. They're talking about affordable housing. But, you know, housing has been looked at in a very skewed manner in cities. Wherever slums have been on private land, you suddenly find that you come out with a PPP kind of model, which suddenly transports them into very high-rise kind of buildings, which remain very unsustainable. Most of them start collapsing. You know, you end up with vertical slums because most of the systems start collapsing once people start living in them. Or if slums are on government land, you have kacha to pakka kind of development that takes place. There have been large slums on government land where a lot of money was spent under various government programs in just making kacha houses pakka. That really didn't take care of the well-being of the people. You need to have light, ventilation. I mean, these are some of the most basic things that need to be taken into consideration when you're designing housing, social housing for the poor. But that was just never considered. And so today you find with the pandemic breaking out, the so-called pakka slums now are still fighting because, with the same problem, because social distancing cannot be maintained. They're still in very, very tiny houses. In fact, they've probably become a little tinier because from patra shed, they've become, brick walls. So reducing maybe the carpet area slightly. So these are problems that are getting flagged, I think, very, very seriously now with the pandemic. And I think governments will really need to start looking at city-wide solutions. You cannot look at slum by slum solutions, where social housing is concerned. You have to have a neighborhood approach. You need to look at what are the densities, what are the possibilities, how can we use a scarce resource like land to optimize it so that you have more and more people living in well-planned, well-developed kind of, societies. And here again, like most of us have been talking about, everything should be at a walking distance. And I would say that let's take it a little further. For the poor, we should look up at housing societies which are walk-up societies. You don't want people to be taking, lifts and going up to 10 and 15 stories, because every city is not Mumbai. You can't have the same kind of solutions going across cities where people are just put into really, very tall buildings which don't work for them. And we have to understand that people living in slums also are using their homes for other kind of activities. So you have to factor all that in. So having data-driven approach, making sure that there's, data can be a unifying platform for most of the departments in the government. I think you can have the water department, the sewerage department, the housing department, the slum department, all of them connected by a good data management system where everybody takes, the responsibility of updating it regularly. So I really believe that the pandemic has thrown up several opportunities for doing things properly now. And if you want to have a smart city, I completely believe that smart data is a must, and that is something that the government really needs to be paying a lot of attention to. And I want to just highlight one point, because some of you might know and some of the people in the audience may not know. We all know that slums, I mean, if you look at a slum in Mumbai, there are several thousand families living in a slum, but they all have just one address. And that's the address, which is the name of the slum and maybe the survey number. So if you need to actually pinpoint the house today, which has a COVID patient, there's no way the government knows where to go, because you don't have an address for every house. I think there is a dire need for giving every house an address which is navigatable. Today, you and I, if we do a Swiggy or an Amazon, we are able to put an address on a Google map, and people can come straight to our house. In a slum, if people need to call an ambulance, the ambulance doesn't know where to go. It stops at the edge of the slum, and you have to take that person very often to the edge of the slum. So I think there are a lot of things that need to be done. There are lots of opportunities that are being thrown up because of the pandemic, and it would be very wise if we all start pulling our socks up and as architects and planners getting really engaged in these processes, because in most of the cities that we've been working, we find there are hardly any architects and planners who are working on a very sustained basis with the local government. And that, I think, really needs to start changing.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Pratima. Next, we will move on to Mr. Sushil Mehta for his introductory comment. Over to you.
Well, good evening to all of you. I'm so glad to see a galaxy of wonderful speakers, and I will start where the previous speakers, Pratima ended. This housing for poor. A large part of the pain in this pandemic is being faced by migratory worker. we just heard about, slums, and where most of the people who are doing something within those houses or are self-employed, like maybe auto rickshaw driver or maybe, a hawker or somebody. But there is a large part of population which lives in this slum is a migratory worker. And, in this pandemic, we have seen that pain. Had these people had a proper housing, I think they would have stayed there. And many of the states who are facing the problem of worker now post-opening wouldn't have seen that. And we would have had much better living condition for those people. So now, how to get this? How to get housing for those migratory workers? That's the question. I would like to speak with my experience of doing such two projects in Dubai. So what happens that you see for these migratory worker, these are basically rental housing, and you have to create this rental housing stock in particularly our big cities. We can start with big cities and gradually we can move on to smaller cities. So what we need to do is to first create a demand. We need to create a demand and then supply. How can you create a demand? You need to, that will be by legal intervention, by legislation. Some of the legislations we have to have by some law whereby it becomes mandatory, as it is in Dubai and Singapore and many of the other countries. It is mandatory for an employer to provide a decent house with minimum specification to every worker. Like in Dubai, for construction worker, for hotel staff, for blue collar, gray collar, white collar worker, there are standards, and because you see most of the population there working is migratory. So there are basic specifications which are set by those governments. And recently in Singapore, this specification was not correct. So they had this corona spread amongst the construction worker housing. So now they are reworking on that, right? So we don't have any such legislation. We don't have any such system. So what we need to do is, I'll just give you in very short, maybe that we have to have some legislation whereby these people, they are working in factory or they are working in a restaurant or a hotel or a construction site. It should be mandatory for employer to provide them housing. There can be some basic specification set, like maybe a small room or a dormitory space with toilet and with some basic civic facilities. This is as far as demand is concerned, that you do a legislation and you create a demand. Now we come to the supply side. Who will do this? The government part of it can be created by government on their extra land or something like that, and part of it can be created by private developers also. You see, there was a time 15 years back or 20 years back, we never thought that the offices and shops will be on rental. There will be shopping malls. When we did our first mall, a 1 million square feet mall, South City in Calcutta in 2005, when we launched, there was a lot of resistance from shop owners that we want to own our shop, we don't want on rental. But today, things have changed. So there is a big rental stock in retail space, big rental stock in office space, these IT parks and all, and there are funds available now. So there was a starting point 15, 20 years back, and today this has matured. So there can be some, and now we are seeing this warehousing, which is a very low rental product, say 15 to 20 rupees and somewhere 22 rupees. Still, warehousing is coming and people are investing into it. So why not on rental housing for migratory worker or for poor worker or for poor people? We need to have legislation. This rent control law, etc., have to be relooked into it, so that the investor does not have any kind of fear in creating those stocks. So when he wants to get it vacated in case of default or in case of some breach of condition, he should be getting his position. Similarly, we need to initially to create this stock, the government has to come with a lot of incentive policies. You need to, because you cannot charge these people 30 rupees or 40 rupees per square feet, or even if I am the employer, I can't afford that kind of high rent. So it has to be low rent, and low rent is only possible if my cost is low. If as a developer I get incentive of say zero GST, or if I get cement and steel and land, everything cheap, subject to that I have to create that kind of housing only, and with those specification, and to let out those people only. There can be ground rules, and some lowering of municipal tax, and maybe income tax free, because you will get 4-5% return on this kind of housing. So 4-5% or 6% return funds can come, provided you give them some incentive, you make it very lucrative to invest in, and we can generate this kind of rental stock of housing, and that can, at least for future, we can stop spreading the slums. Those people who are working in factories or working on construction sites, or doing these kind of the informal jobs, if they get this kind of housing at a low rent, we have to think about it. A lot of people may differ with me that no, it is only government's job, it should be done by government, but government can't do it. We have to have a business model for it to be developed. And the business model, there was an announcement this time in this famous 20 lakh crore package. There was affordable housing for the migratory and the poor people on PPP model, or there was a hint of that. So it was beautiful. I really liked it. If this can be developed, if the central governments and the state governments and the local governments look into it, and and with the private developer in consultation with policymakers, should in consultation with you planners and we developers, we can definitely come out with one model, and that can be a starting point. And at least there should be some law in cities that if you are employing somebody, you have to provide housing. And by doing this, automatically the demand will be generated, and developers will develop it so this is as far as this poor housing is concerned. I will quickly touch base on, because most of the things have been discussed, and I will just quickly touch base on few things. Like when it comes to township, the healthcare facility you planner need to look into. You really need to have more healthcare facility, and with the with more closeness to each cluster. We are really short of this facility. With regard to this walkable city and this concept of cycling and all, maybe that cycling is a good idea, but in some of the city and some of the weather it may be difficult, but still it should be worked on, at least with the students and with a lot of people. But there is a perception issue. We have to, this lot of social workers and this NGOs, and we all have to perhaps create a kind of situation whereby it is not looked down. I raised this issue in my office that okay, if anybody is buying cycle, I will sponsor it. So some of my senior staffs, they laughed on it. Sir, who will do the cycling? But if we make it fashionable, that you are cycling say 2-3 kilometers to your walk, you are really doing something great for the environment, you are doing something great for the city. We have to make it fashionable. We have to change the perception of cycling. That's a problem in our country, in particular cities, with people who are a little on the higher strata. So the cycling is something, this was my thought process. Then another thing I would like to touch base on some of the public spaces. Mr. Raheja spoke about housing and all. So public spaces during this pandemic and all, we have seen that particularly shopping malls, office building, airports, hospitals, I think we need much bigger lobbies, much bigger waiting space, queuing space, like we have in all the lobbies, those DMFD, those portals for metal detectors and the baggage X-ray machines. Now we will also have some more space for the thermal cameras to be installed, and those things have to be retrofit or in the new facility have to be provided. And maybe some wash basins near, because this hand sanitizer, a lot of people are not happy. So in one of our mall, We had space luckily, so we have installed wash basins, and we have provided this liquid soaps with the sensor-based taps, and it's working very well. So these kind of wash basins in certain strategic area, that can be a good idea. So, you know, as it is, our country is very hot, people sweat, so they can, at least those security guards, drivers, and lot of this class 3, class 4 staff, they can wash their face, they can wash their hands with the, and they can be in much better hygienic condition, even if the corona is not there. Then, you know, the societies must have business centers. All the societies must have business center, and even the town planning also, we must have small business center, like we have in Calcutta, New Town, Rajarhat. It's a new township. So the chairman the other day spoke in one of the webinar. He was a panelist, and I was the chairman of that conference. So he gave an idea that he's creating small business center. He has given a name, urban cocoons, where, you know, people can, you know, go and do their work. You know, it is not possible every time from work from home for some people. They may not be having that much of a space. So these small business centers in society, in some kiosk or something, that should be thought of by you planners. Now, with regard to the transport, you know, like Singapore has got this monorail thing. You see, and Singapore weather and our country, our city's weather is quite similar. So we can also think of this monorail system for each community or for each clusters and things like that. And that can become, you know, easy commuting facility. Walk to work and walkable cities, these are very good ideas. But, you know, many of our cities are quite old cities, and they are just developed without much planning. So their things may be very difficult, and, you know, I don't know, you planner have to suggest something on those lines. And so these were some of my thoughts, which I thought that were not discussed, and I thought that maybe that I can add on this. With this, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So today we have discussed a lot on the emerging trends. I see some of the aspects which are more design related, especially at the development level, be it the study rooms or dedicated coves or pods or home offices, I think, which are going to stay for longer time. It also implies that people are looking for larger spaces, and they are also willing to move little away from the city to afford those the larger spaces. A lot of other trends are also emerging, where importance is given to washrooms, powder rooms, especially near the home entrances. Self-sufficient homes and self-sufficient developments are being talked upon. And technically equipped spaces, be it sensor-based controls, the adaptable layouts, flexible multi-purpose spaces. So all of that are going to stay. It has been done bits and pieces across different projects, different levels in the past. I think going forward, it is going to be considered as an important element. But one of the things is the touch-free interactions, technology-based sanitization, hygiene levels, be it the lighting system, entry system, taps, flushes, all those things in the public washrooms, all those things are going to be transformed into more of a touch-free interaction. So the complete the look and feel, the way we've been dealing with spaces are going to change. And also we are talking about zero maintenance, self-sustainable buildings and campuses, minimum human contact. We are also talking about flexible building design. Modular construction is going to come in a big way. Some of the amenities which has been mostly used by our users, like communal facilities, especially like health clubs, gymnasiums, and swimming pools, might get a complete overhaul, and in some cases complete exclusion in some of the five-star hotels and residential developments. I think these are the trends which are emerging across globe. I would like to ask Amar on what is he witnessing when he is interacting with the global designers and architects, whether these newer trends which are emerging, a few of them which I highlighted, are going to stay forever, or which is going to have a major impact in the way we look at the urban space and also the spaces which we are going to design in the near future? Over to you, Amar.
Yes, I mean, there are two thoughts on it, basically. I mean, still people are still kind of finding out what is the way out. I mean, still they are not clear about what could be the real way out. I mean, there is no still solution on the current pandemic situation for current unusual scenario. So from that perspective, I mean, it's not getting yet clear that, as the designers, what could be the way out towards the designing the cities. And as I told you, everybody is still talking about, the old thoughts, which are going to stay for the, which are everlasting kind of thoughts. And the key is going back to the nature, which is the most important. So everybody is talking on those lines. You can't harm the nature. You have to be living with the nature. That is the most important thing. And everybody is talking about what are the mistakes as the human beings that we have done in the development of the cities, and whether the development has to be really called as a development or something which is we are going towards degrading our overall living experience. I mean, at the one time, what we talk about the development, is it really a development? I mean, everybody talks about the China, which is infrastructure-wise it is hugely developed, but is it really the human development which is happening in China? So that is the most important. Similarly, it's about the cities as well. So kind of the life that we are living in the cities, is it something which is the kind of we talk about the human development? I mean, that is the most important thing. Another thing on the second part of it, in terms of the spatial development, a lot of these global firms have started talking about what are the most important things. Those have to be designed. And as you correctly talked about, other speakers also have talked about, the washing spaces, the community business centers, pedestrianization, all those aspects have been talked about. It's like now the city, I mean, earlier we were designing the city from the whole to the part. I think it's now going from the part to the whole. I mean, I'll just take an example about, Mumbai. We are living into the tropical climate. What is most important in the tropical climate as the living condition is the cross ventilation, the semi-open spaces. So in the apartments, what could be the semi-open space? We should have the balconies, terraces. Now you see what is the kind of a juxtaposition in terms of the rules and regulations. I mean, all these balconies, terraces, I mean, the authorities had nullified. I mean, you have to take it into the FSI. Now, no developer is going to give it out of the FSI because he is not going to earn the monies which he is going to earn out of the enclosed spaces on those things. So we have to look at, in terms of the development of these rules and regulations, also starting from the, where we are, what we belong to, ultimately from those kind of things. So this is about the, balconies and all those things. I mean, few years back, yes, we had the balconies. What has started happening? The smaller apartment, when the apartments were smaller and the prices started rising, and the families were expanding. Probably, it started becoming unaffordable to, buy new houses, new homes for the growing families. Then they started encroaching the balconies. And when government has started seeing the balconies are getting encroached, slowly and made into the kind of smaller, computer table or the smaller offices and all, they thought rather than they're developing into the something, which is very taking to the kind of a new idea towards the development, they thought it's the kind of a good, revenue earning kind of a piece. And they started charging a premium on that as an enclosed balcony. So rather than doing something which is innovative and giving something which is more kind of a spatial experience, what has happened is, because there was a kind of a weak voice, I can say, in terms of, developing these rules, regulations and all, the city has started growing into a very different kind of fashion, which is not complementary to the, the climatic condition, environmental conditions that has to be there. I mean, in Mumbai, if you'll see particularly, it's a linear city. It's not like a Delhi or it's not like an Ahmedabad, where you have got a link road. I mean, the morning, in the evening, the entire city sustains on the complete masses from one end, the density of the masses from one end to other end of the city, from the north to south in the morning and from in the evening from south to north, get transported. So that is how the city lives. Okay, so for this kind of a city, once you know that, my urban rail network, it's a kind of it's overthreading. You need to have different strategies. How do you develop the cities? I mean, with that, you started developing, let's say, the city, which is a New Bombay. And the success of the New Bombay was how Bombay and New Bombay can be disconnected. That's when only you can grow New Bombay as an independent city. But what has happened, we had grown both the cities, and then we started connecting them with a very strong transportation network. So what has happened that New Bombay again has started, rather than developing on its own, it has again started developing as a kind of initially as a suburb of Mumbai. So again, the Mumbai started getting loaded. Now same is happening with Pune. Okay, and similarly, I mean, with the Pune as taking as a nucleus, it will happen towards the Pimpri Chinchwad and towards Magarpatta and all those kind of things. So rather than all these cities that we grow as the independent nuclei, where everything is self-sustained, what is happening is the load is coming on where the main growth is happening, and everything else starts becoming a more kind of a parasitical kind of a growth rather than growing it together. I think somewhere we need to get out of this approach and look at the city or every small nuclei, how it can grow independently, and rather than the parasite, how it can add more value towards the main city. That's the most important, and I think overall approach towards the design of the city has to be from that perspective.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Amar. I think your point is well taken that it should be sustainable and resilient design solutions, and also without having much of an impact on the environmental degradation and all of that stuff. So I will move on to Mr. Sarabhai, and you can highlight your thoughts on what are the measures need to be taken more from an environmental perspectives, and what are the initiatives I think we need to address when it comes to the open spaces and its impact on our day-to-day life. Mr. Sarabhai.
Yeah, thanks, Shankar. I want you to make a few points regarding the discussion which has happened.
Yes, please.
I think the first point was that are we really serious when we talk about making cities walkable or bicycleable? We imitate some design from somewhere because it is part of the rules which says that you will have to provide a path here. So BKC was mentioned, we can provide a path. If you say, where do you and I walk most? We either walk in a park or something in a city, or we walk at the airport. Now, when we walk in the Delhi airport, we have an air-conditioned space, we have walkways put into it, we have toilets available whenever we want. We have a space where we all walk, and it's not a short walk. But if you provide that quality, even half that quality, or even a quarter of that quality as a walkway, you mean to say people will not walk? Where there is shade, where there is cleanliness, where there is this thing, of course they will walk. So is it not, if we imitate a walkway from somewhere where it's a very different climate, where there are no hawkers, where there is a different type of discipline sense, we bring it here. Here, if you make a walkway, we have to provide for the hawkers. But if you don't, and they come on the scene, you're saying, why are they there? Now, I think therefore the first question I wanted to say was that if we are serious, do we mean to say that Indians, all of us and several others, can't figure out how to make a walking city? According to me, we can make a walking city. We challenge anyone, give us any area in any town, and we'll show that it can be walkable with pleasure. If you say that it is only walkable for the poor and not for me, then it won't work. It has to be walkable for some of the richest people in Ahmedabad, I don't want to name them, live hardly 500 feet from their office, but they still sit in their Mercedes to go there because it is not walkable. If it was in America, you would have walked or bicycled. So that was the first point. The second point was that our zoning and our bylaws are completely outdated. They are from another world, which is bygone. When we came in Ahmedabad, when we were starting work, they were moving everyone out, say you cannot, you have to have a residential area, you have an industrial area, you have to have a commercial area. So everyone now has to move. Earlier, we used to live above and work down, many people who had shops. Then many years later, I went to Washington, and a friend of mine, IMF and everything, takes me to this wonderful new idea. He takes me there and shows me where you live above and work below. And I said that this was what every Indian city had. You took it out through World Bank consultations, and now you'll make Indians travel to America to see how you make a shop below and a thing above. So this is the second part, that unless we are willing to really scrap, in Delhi, when people were to set up small offices in their houses, they were scared. Unless you are a doctor or unless you are some category, you cannot. You cannot set up an office in a logical place. Now, the third point is very important, I wanted to say, was that our cities have grown, and you see wonderful structures and you see wonderful things, but you must realize that 40 to 60% of the people live in slums. This is even the state of the current city. Now, this was sort of acceptable to us because we didn't have to see it, we could drive past. In this situation, as Mr. Raheja was rightly saying, a person will say, let me find a nice farmhouse where I have things, every amenity, and let all those people who have to live in the city live in the city. The city will become a place for the poor, and the people who actually run it and control it will be living on the periphery. You will have a new type of suburbia. And because I don't have to face the pollution and I don't have to face this, the entire city, inner city might become slum. So are we wanting a city which is fractured, where there will be a new elite and there will be everyone else who lives in whatever conditions, like the migrants who lived horribly? What did Indians do? What did the companies do? What did we do? When we heard this horrific story one after another, what did we do? So you have that situation, and how do you overcome it? Now, when you're talking about greenery, talking about this, obviously a green cover is one of the cheapest, best way to provide cooling. It's the best way of dealing with climate change. It's the best way of dealing with air pollution. And it's such a simple idea. And if you say that we want to, again, green cities, I've done in our own campus, we also have run so much greenery there. And what we're trying to do is that governments are certainly doing their job. But why can't we take a campaign of every industrial area, every hospital, every public space, every school, and really green it to the extent it is possible? And these are things which can be done slowly. So my feeling is that a lot of this that we are discussing can be done, and the simplest of it is creating a walking city. If we have the will to do it, and if you and I say that we are going to walk, and if we have a problem, we'll solve it, which we can. But if I have to walk in the Delhi airport, then I will only solve that problem. I find the carpet too heavy for me to pull my bag, so I will complain about that. But what about everyone else? So I think there is a will issue, but COVID has given us an eye opener. And if we are wise in India, we should use that to really think this through and really lead the world in what a sustainable city is. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sarabhai. Yeah. So next, Manoj, I would come to you. Today, the importance which we give for healthcare and especially hygiene is nowadays becoming a paramount important. So all these years, I don't know whether we have talked or spoken about healthcare and hygiene so many times earlier, but now, yes, everybody is talking about healthcare and hygiene. So what is your take on what is going to emerge in the healthcare, especially the hygiene, importance of hygiene in our spaces, Manoj?
I think hygiene is one of the major concerns in our country. Not about only cleanliness, but hygiene of looking into where things are. Because we are so concerned about our well-being that we forget what the guy next door is all about. His conditions, like Pratima spoke about the slums. The guy's not having the address and 8 people living in one room. What kind of social distancing or hygiene we are talking about? If you go back a bit within our own household, our growing traditions, when we were growing up, we were not allowed to take the slippers which we were wearing outside inside the house, right? Few small things. We used to take bath once we come back from work, and then with the family, all our clothes and everything were directly pushed into the washing area before even interacting with the people. So these are the basic things which we have now forgotten. I think that is something which we need to again get back. Our values which we have been taught while growing, and which is slowly missing because of, as rightly said by most of the panelists, we are just simply following the West, but we should value our tradition in terms of our best living. Also, our caste system, okay, which it is not a right forum to discuss, but we defined a certain strata of people, certain kind of job, which later being exploited by certain section of the people. But it was also very, very scientific, because that is where you are respecting that core job that person is doing, and that way you are also maintaining that so-called hygiene. The other challenge which we'll face in India is that we are supposed to be a very socially driven community, right? When we meet someone, namaste is gone. We hug. And if you see our prime minister hugging almost every premier is meeting, so that is our thing. So how do you move away from that social distancing? So that is something we need to look into. So that means we have to ensure that whatever we do on our daily life, we have to follow the basics which we have been doing during our childhood, and we have grown to that now. Since the technology is making us do everything from our phone, so we have lost touch to many of the practices we used to follow since our childhood. The other thing is that in India, means we talk about healthcare. Now, healthcare, there are two types of organization. One is the public organization. Then there is an in between, which is the NGOs, and then we have got the private organizations. Now, the private organization is here to make money, come what may. So they have got a different perspective. The government organization has the will, but they doesn't have the infrastructure, because the kind of money which the government puts in for such kind of infrastructure is never implemented to the core, whatever reason it is. But the implement is there. Means I've been associated with three aims, and I know the kind of money the government has put it. The budget is much more higher than a private hospital which spends. But it never. But if you see a government hospital, you will not realize that this is the money which was spent for this kind of. So there has to be will, that whatever money whoever is putting up, it has to be put into the best use. The other thing is that we only talk about hospital, but what about the research? Means there is no hospital in India which does research on infection control. And today's pandemic, or whatever, the SARS and all these things, are all what virus driven infection. So no hospital does research on infection control. Today also we are talking about COVID hospital. Everyone is talking about China has done a 14 days hospital, India will do it in this many days. Everyone talks about Reliance has done a 200 bed hospital in this many days, and everyone is talking about those numbers. We are also seeing hospitals where we are converting the IT facilities into COVID center, but that is not the future. Future is that how we kind of streamline the need of this country, and then focus on the requirement of the healthcare issues. Hygiene is very important. Even our hospitals, if you go to the nursing homes and all this thing, will you get yourself admitted to those nursing homes? No, with hygiene condition of that nursing home will make you more sick. That's the reason all the private hospitals, they gain more patronage from the sick people, or poor rich people. Poor people are relying on those government infrastructure. So that is also one important factor where we need to start from the basic healthcare institution, where hygiene is something which is neglected. So we need to get into that aspect. It has to start from our home, then to our workplaces, and then to the community. If you follow that few principles, I think we can take care of the hygiene condition. Second thing is,
thanks, Manoj. Nayan, over to you now. With your affordable housing to luxury housing, now in this changing phase, what is that your customers are looking at? So now, do you see any change in customers' perception, what they want in your products? Do you see a shift in their perception towards what they buy?
I think the last answer I gave, I pretty much answered the entire trends that we are seeing, in the market. And I think the important question here is that, what are people buying at this moment or not? Because I think that is a larger issue that India has to grapple with. On one side is the deaths and the infections which are spreading at a massive pace, and on the other side, we're grappling with an economy, where there's a lot of uncertainty and volatility. And I think a lot of the ideas also being thrown around on the forum, about sustainability on a city level or on a planning level, I think largely has to do with the economy more than anything else. I think even probably more than the weather, it's the economy. I mean, you still have a place like Dubai, which is really hot, and people still walk on the roads. But in India, people don't walk on the road. I don't think it's as much the weather as it is the fact that, there is too much of a social and economic divide between people, at the moment. And I think there is a much, much larger issue to be grappled with. Same thing comes with, a lot of the points being made by, some of the panelists about, the slum condition in India, and how do we solve that. So we are doing, one of the first slum rehab projects in New Delhi, and we are aware of the challenges. Being both an architect and a developer, I'm aware of some of the challenges that come, with high-rise buildings. But easier said than done, to find an ideal situation, where things can be solved. Usually, when there are numbers of 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 people involved, it becomes a much larger political, sort of an issue to solve these problems. Coming back to your point, I think consumer trends, that we are seeing right now, people are grappling with. I see the mid-segment grappling with a little bit of a uncertainty. I think there has been a lot of job losses in the last 2 to 3 months, and that's leading to a little bit of uncertainty for the middle class in our country at the moment. The banks are having a relook at the at the eligibility of some of these people, and which is also leading to a little bit of a cash flow cycle, getting interrupted at the moment. However, I see, a strong movement from people who are in rented accommodation at the moment, and making a shift towards at least their first home, which can be an affordable or a mid-segment housing. A lot of these people have realized the importance of having their own sort of home or their own roof over their heads over the past 2-3 months, given people time to think, what's the better way of, living, whether renting or owning. And as I said earlier, I mean, in the luxury space also, I think a lot of people who are living in luxury or ultra luxury condominiums, including us, I mean, we are doing super luxury condominiums as well, but I see that a lot of people are looking, in that typology for second homes, which are sort of farms or larger bungalows. So there's a very, very strong shift over there. Needless to say, I mean, we've already commented on a lot of touchless systems that are coming into housing complexes. I think these are going to be the first steps towards reaching, a post-COVID era solution. I don't think a very, very large or a long-term planning can be made at the moment itself. We can't start telling the planners that now we need to completely redesign the cities from the bottom up, because we simply don't know how things are going to pan out over the next 6 months. However, having said that, some of the points of having what our Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls as Atmanirbharta, I would say is having decentralized sustainability for everyone and for everything, whether it's our electricity, whether it's our water, whether it's our food supplies, any of these things. I think regardless of whether there is corona or no corona, maybe in the coming time, I think that is something like sustainability on a city level. I think that is something that needs a relook. Absolutely. I think that's something that all of us should be aiming for, regardless of the corona times. Yeah.
Thanks, Nayan. Pratima, quickly, you can take a minute because we are conscious of the time. I think we are overstepping to the next session. Pratima, just quickly a minute on how data is very important for making this land as a resource to take it forward to the next level, Pratima. You're on mute. Sorry.
I'll just give you a very quick example of how we did it in a very small city called Sangli, Miraj in Maharashtra, which had about 78 slums across the city. And when we brought all the data on the GIS platform, we realized that almost 35 slums would need to move or relocate either because they were on reservation land or they were hugging a road which was going to be widened in in a few years. So the first thing that we did was that we didn't want people to be uprooted from their social amenities like livelihood, schools, and whatnot. So we really put people in the middle of the whole thing, the planning, and we said nobody should move more than 2 to 3 kilometers from where they're residing in the new rehabilitation plan that we come up for the entire city. And we actually managed to do that. So when the entire project was implemented, I mean, only 40% of the project got implemented because of a lot of other issues that came up, mostly political. But people bought into this entire thing very willingly. They were willing to move, knowing that they were only going to move 2 or 3 kilometers, but what they were going to move into was a secure home, well planned, which would actually be very healthy for their family, and they would be leaving behind a very secure future for their for the next generation. So I felt that in this particular case, it actually got high commendation from the government of India, because they said that it had the seeds for a nationwide implication as to how to design very, very sensitively when it comes to social housing, by making sure that people are not thrown to the outskirts of the city, which is what normally happens when we do a rehabilitation plan. Most of the time the poor are thrown outside, and then they're sort of driven deeper into poverty. But here we did it in a very, very very planned, very sensitive, very inclusive. I think inclusion is something that is very important. We had the entire city on board. And when I say the city, I mean the elected members, as well as the city administrators, as well as the community representatives, all of them coming together, all of them realizing that maybe, we need to find a via media where we get a win-win situation for everyone. And that is what we did. And so that's why I keep saying that you have to look at more of a neighborhood approach or a citywide approach when you're looking at any kind of redevelopment, especially for the slum pockets. And I would just like to end by saying that, many of the cities, when you look at the kind of densities that are prevalent, say like a city like Pimpri-Chinchwad, which is a very, very well-to-do city, but what is the tenement density, existing tenement density in slum? It's barely 350 tenements per hectare. So there's no need for people to be transported into 15 and 20-story buildings, which become very untenable. So walk-up kind of, housing is possible for almost all the residents, the poor residents of the city. And it would only require a little bit of more thinking and planning and an inclusive approach. So I would like to sort of, end by saying that having all stakeholders coming together, like the Prime Minister says, sabka saath, sabka vikas. I don't think there is, any way you can do this without getting everyone involved in the process.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pratima. Mr. Mohta, just final comment, and before I pass it on to Sapna. I think we lost him. Yeah, Sapna, over to you for the Q&A.
Yeah, Mr.
Hello.
Mohta is there? Yeah, Mr. Mohta is there. Shankar, you wanted to ask something. Mr. Mohta is there?
Yeah, Mr. Mohta, what are the things we would need from government side? I know that you've been interacting a lot with government, and one or two things which is very, very important, which you need from government to do in the near future, Mr. Mohta. Hello. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Mohta. Just two things you want government to do at this point in time to revive the industry.
Hello.
Hello, Mohtaji.
Can't hear. I can't hear. Not able to hear.
Okay.
Okay, let me bring in our other panelists, Mr.
Yeah.
Jinal Palkhiwala and Mr. Anil Beejawat. Mr. Anil and Jinal ji, if you can join us now. Yeah. So, Jinal, let's start with you. You have any questions for our panelists? We have heard the entire conversation. We have been talking about from individual development to the city and walkable cities, and so please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. I would like to have a question for Mr. Raheja. As you have been, we have been hearing a lot about, facilities like clubhouse, swimming pool, gymnasiums, things like that in the, good localities and projects that have been coming up. But now, do you plan to have kind of a business center in the upcoming projects? Because a lot of things like work from home, which everyone is discussing, and in times to come, people are going to need that. So will that be a common, feature which the upcoming projects will have post-COVID?
Yeah, so, thank you for that question, Mr. Jinal. Business center is something that we have already been providing even before the Corona times. In one of our projects in Delhi, for example, we're providing a centralized conference rooms and meeting rooms, for outsiders to come in. Now, the more important question is that, all the shared facilities that we are providing in a lot of our projects, and that's a question that, to me also as an architect, it's a bit tricky, and depends on, when situation gets better. How do we actually make a clubhouse with recreational and wellness activities like your spa and your, gymnasium and everything, and still manage to keep them sanitized 100%, from the user perspective? I think that's a bigger thought that centers where, which are projects of a certain category, we are anyways providing. And also now the important thing is that, instead of having like in our designs, we are trying to make slightly more efficient space planning. So, rather than having corridors inside apartments, maybe by better planning, we can use that space for having a study room or, some sort of a room inside the house, because I think that's an immediate requirement. People are really hassled, especially people who have little children like myself.
Yeah.
So they keep jumping around when you're on the computer. So you really need to have, some space for yourself in the daytime.
Good. Thank you. My another question to the architects basically is, we have noticed that people did not cope well with isolation. How do we plan public spaces that can remain less crowded?
You give more space. Currently, we don't give the adequate space. We only give the prescribed space stipulated by the rules, 10%, 20%. I think we should give more space. And right example, if you see this, means if you take an example of South Bombay, where we have got Azad Maidan, it works, right? But how many such spaces we have in our new planned cities? So whatever planned open spaces we have is done by the Britishers.
Yeah. I think another thing is now we can make use of the technology as well, in terms of understanding what is the density of the spaces. And after certain density, we have to understand that, okay, this space is not going to work. And then itself, wherever possible, the entries or whatever that space could be, that can be controlled. Like it's in the housing complexes, housing societies. I mean, if everything starts working on the app-based and starts working, regulating the entries, exits, those things, it will start controlling the densities. Similar can happen even at the railway stations or even at the, public spaces. I mean, this Arogya Setu app, I mean, it's an amazing thing. I mean, if there is a person who is next to you or in your vicinity, and if he has got some kind of a, contamination or whatever it is, contact or something, that you get to know. So similar things are possible by the technology development. I think some more work has to happen over that. And ultimately, it's, I think, the public education, which is the most important thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Over to you, Sapna.
Sapna? You're on mute, Sapna.
We are getting Mr. Beejawat also on. So he has a few questions. In the meantime, I have an audience question where they are, one of the audience, Mr. T.S. Rajgopalan, he says that, government is planning a lot of infra projects. Mr. Mohta, probably I'll ask you to answer that. Government is planning a lot of infra projects, but where they are lacking is the implementation. That is pathetic, and that is why Mr. Rajgopalan says a lot of expenditure goes waste. What are your comments on that?
You see, the problem
How we can correct it? Yeah.
Yeah, the problem in the government is that, you know, they plan something, but mostly it remains in paper. When it comes to, you know, the government jobs are transferable jobs and there is no ownership into those things. So that is a big problem, you know, that the ownership is not there. And then, you know, when it comes to infrastructure thing, the land issue comes. I'm talking in context of certain areas in Bengal where, you know, we had a lot of metro railway projects, but, you know, those got delayed because of the land issue and because of the clearance of and when it comes to you know, some central funded scheme, then there is a delay in funding or some kind of issues between center and state. So these are some of the issues. So but primary issue I feel is issue. How do this ownership issue in doing a project? There are some that legendary metro. There are legendary personality who took, they completed those. So, you know, we have you. So this is what this public infrastructure for.
We have Mr. Beejawat also now. Mr. Beejawat, you had a few questions we were discussing earlier. Yeah, if you.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
I just had a small query in my mind. You know, right now we are all in kind of you know, Shamshan Vairagya position, wherein we have come into a crisis and we are all you know, racking our minds to, you know, do this, do that. A lot of learning has happened because of COVID, and there is a lot of learning that can be recorded from the condominiums, from the containment zones, from the you know, secluded zones, from where people have sustained time. And we have realized that there are a lot of redundant activities that we have been doing. A lot of activity which was, you know, kind of routine, like commuting. It may not have been necessary. A lot of back office work which many companies are doing, they could easily be done from their work from home concepts. But do you think a lot of because there is a cost involved to everything that will be done, will this sustain post a solution which comes for COVID? All that we are now thinking of doing, will it be relevant once maybe after 12 months or 14 months there is a solution available? What happens then? If we make permanent changes to our lifestyles or maybe designs and all this, because pandemics have come and gone in the past also. And the best of the countries, you know, a lot of things that we are now wanting to do, most of the things which the panelists have suggested, they will be, they are already norms in most of the advanced societies. But have they fared better in this crisis? So I would just like to know the ideas from the panel. So what they think, is it going to be sustained even after a solution has been found for COVID?
Any specific speaker? Nayan would like to take it.
You know, so one of the things that we have seen in our organization over the past 2-3 months, you know, since the lockdown has been in effect, we've, you know, we are doing a complete integration with various software platforms. We already had an ERP. We are sort of upgrading that. You know, internally we have started working on Microsoft Teams, you know, for the entire organization.
Right.
There is a lot of digitization. You know, there is a complete digitization of all the files, you know, within the system, which are all getting up, you know, on the cloud. So what we are getting ready for is the way of living. You know, if it takes time for Corona to go, like maybe 2 years, 3 years, we are ready for it today. Unfortunately, I can't predict the future, but I can change myself today as an organization and as an individual. And I mean, let's see, how it goes after that. We'll most probably, even if we were to see a vaccine or a medicine come in after 6 months, and I really pray to God that it does, we would like to, work in this fashion where we feel that, digitization has the capability for all of us to change, our lifestyles. And it's a lighter approach. People waste lesser number of hours traveling. They can spend more time with their families. They have time for their health, on a personal level as well. I think this change may actually, some of the good things and the positives may actually stay for many years to come.
Correct. Just a small, a personal question in a sense that I am into tile business. As you know, RAK Ceramics is a tile manufacturer. So do you think as an architect, will it ever be possible that the architect decides a tile without actually seeing it, only seeing a digital image or something like that?
So, I've had only 5 meetings till now in the last 3 months, which are physical meetings. 2 of them have been sample meetings where I've actually had to go on and see the tile and the stone and the whatever the MDF. So that is one thing that cannot be. I mean, you have to see it.
I agree.
I agree with Mr. Raheja. There are certain products where unless you see it, there has been discussion about this, the shopping, etc. That retail, online shopping, etc. We are going to malls. So, there has been always a discussion that whether the complete shift of shopping can be to e-commerce. We had a discussion with our customers also. It cannot be, because the look and feel, touch and feel is very important for all products.
Agree with you. Sir. And we are gearing it accordingly, because a major part of the work is done digitally. And then maybe the samples, reaching out the samples, we are trying to find a hygienic way to do that. So, thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'll just take another audience
question.
One
more point I wanted to add, somebody said that, that how many of these changes will last.
Sustained,
The one example was given by one gentleman in the webinar, that this silver line changed because of this cholera. So, but that remained permanently. So whatever good are happening, whatever the silver linings out of these pandemics are there, they are going to stay for a long time, for forever. Like this, this lot of traveling will be cut down. I think this virtual meetings or virtual conference, yes, there will be a blow to hotel. Like all this conference were happening in hotel, there will be somebody's loss and many people's gain. I am also having a resort and we are suffering there. But at the same time, I can find that, without traveling so much we can do. And I wish, we have to, as a builder, we have to number of time go to government offices, meet officers, meet some senior bureaucrats. Unfortunately, still these people have not adapted this habit of, virtual meeting. I wish this government offices can also come more on this virtual platform. And then, instead of going to their office, waiting for half an hour, and then he's busy in some meeting, some political meeting, or officer is busy somewhere, and, going, coming, spending time, if we can have the virtual meeting and finish off the business there. So, these are the things which must be pushed, and we must consider them as a silver lining of this pandemic.
Right. One more thing, I think immunity is something nobody is talking about. I think health, hygiene, and immunity should be added in our discourses now. And in India, we do have a lot to talk about it and lot to maybe give to the world also.
Kind of Panipuri.
I think what it has brought into sharp focus is building your own immunity.
Correct.
And, personal well-being has taken center stage, I think, for most people. There was an interesting thing, survey which was carried out by one of the leading hospitals here, where 500 patients were treated for corona. They did a survey and they were horrified that 85% people just didn't exercise. So I have a feeling people are going to be looking at well-being in a very different way, because this has not been there for a week or 2 weeks. Now we are into it in a sustained way for the 4th month. And building your own immune system, I think, has taken priority for a lot of people.
Yeah, and this is something which will sustain. I mean, if this is built in our designs, this is something which cannot vanish.
Yes, and
whatever happens.
Our organization, we have put, well-being, physical well-being center stage, because most of them are frontline workers. They have to work in slum communities, so they really need to have good immunity. So we've been already exposing them, and even long before Corona hit us, we have been sort of investing in their well-being for a while now, both mental and physical.
Absolutely.
Sir, I want to add something here. मैं पिछले 3 महीने से I'm working very hard on my health because I thought I was not in a very bad shape. I've lost some 14-15 kgs in the last 3 months.
Goodness.
By dieting, exercising, because I know there is only 2 ways.
Right.
There is one is your health, and second is your home and your precautions that you do. So very important point you said. अपनी जिंदगी अपने हाथ में, ये 2 points are the most important thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, sir.
So fantastic. I think we had a very varied views from all the panelists. Shankar, would you like to sum up the entire conversation that we had? You're on mute, Shankar.
Thanks, Sapna. So we had a lot of insights from our eminent speakers. A lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts came in. Some of them just I will sum up. Very important one, there should be a marriage between pedestrian and motorable cities. Cities are not designed for these kind of pandemics, but going forward, we need to take this account for our future cities. Smart cities, circular economy, walkable cities, compact cities, all the cities are going to stay, and everybody is looking at these cities as the future cities. Work from home, another gentleman was also highlighting this, whether it is going to stay. I think the panelists are of the opinion that it is going to stay, and a lot of design inputs are also emerging from the work from home coming in a big way. Entertainment, shopping, the way we design shopping centers, all of them are going to have a major change going forward. The emphasis is all given on the informal sector, the waste management, the decentralized approach. The suitability for India is the key. I think everybody emphasizes on a point that I think it should be an Indian model. Whatever is happening elsewhere across the globe, I think we need to have a suitability assessment for India. Also, we need to approach all of our developmental processes from post-COVID and pre-COVID kind of a scenario, which is very important. Government is also proactive. Government is also adapting. Government is willing to change. They're also listening to a lot of our inputs in a shorter span of time, and also they are aligning their thoughts in implementation. So designing in isolation should change. I think more of an integrated development is the new normal. Healthcare is becoming an important element in our master planning. Going forward, all the master plans, healthcare and hygiene, wellness related activities should be given most important. And also there was a talk on the urban, that is the urban amenities to the rural areas, that is Kalam's PET project, which has been talked upon. Again, we need to have more of a short-term and a long-term goals. Very important thing, the urban poor and especially the migrant population should be taken care of by providing maybe a rental housing scheme, providing shelter to them so that they have an access to housing. Sanitization chambers, touchless elevators, sensor-based developments, self-sustainable developments are all the new elements which are coming in our real estate developments. So well-being of the city is the well-being for everyone. Nice comment over there. And the informal sector and the citizens' participation is the key. And data and technology is going to drive our cities going forward. Very important. We need to have data on each and every aspect which we do, and how are we going to integrate that with technology. Light, ventilation, key factors for our cities, city-centric solutions, and not a particular, let's say, slum-centric solutions is the need of the hour. So it means that I think we need to have a kind of a holistic approach, housing for the urban poor, migration workers. Legislation should also change. I think legislation should have legislation should bring in new elements. What had happened during COVID and post-COVID, we don't have a proper bylaws in place. We need to revisit all our regulations, bylaws, and this is the time we need to revisit, because new products, new design elements, new spaces are going to be created. Some of the interesting things, I know I liked one of them, is the small urban cocoons are going to be formed. The way we are looking at the shopping centers are going to shrink. It is going to become really very small. So all these things are going to come in near future. These changes are going to stay. One of the participants, one of the panelists also was asking whether these changes are going to stay. I feel that, okay, all these changes are going to stay, because in the last 100 years, we've been seeing that all those improvisation in our urban fabric is all staying for good. I think the healthcare is going to have a major thrust in our lives. Alternate modes of transport and the shared and active modes of transport coupled with walking and cycling is going to stay. Development of transitional housing, which is very important. The housing for the migrant workers is going to stay. The technology for enhanced city planning and governance coupled with new institutional arrangement for the disaster management aligned with master plans to create better cities. People should adopt the new way of life. So end of the day, it is about the public-private partnerships coupled with citizens partnership to create a satellite township model. Maybe we need to give more of a re-densification of cities, emphasizing more of the suburban areas, villages, creating employment opportunities elsewhere, and with the participation of government and also participation of the private. I think we are riding the wave, we are riding the tide gracefully. I think Indian cities have already displayed immense drive and ability to bounce back in many other things, be it economy, be it the other markets. So we always bounce back quickly. And it is evident that once the pandemic is under control, if the vaccine is there for control the COVID, I think these cities will emerge as more citizen-friendly, sustainable, and future-ready cities for tomorrow. And I think Indian cities are going to compete with the global cities, and we have a huge opportunity at this point in time. Better city planning and designing of our cities is going to stay, and it is going to dominate the entire global phenomenon in terms of how cities are going to evolve. And we have a huge opportunity to make a citizen-friendly, future-ready cities which will compete with the global cities in a long run. With that, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for your participation. We will close this panel discussion. Over to you, Sapna.
Yeah, before, we have heard the eminent speakers, the experts in their fields. Before we conclude, we also ran a poll while the discussion was on. So just giving you the gist of what the viewers thought. So on asking, is de-densification is the way forward to address the environmental threat? 63% say yes, they agree to that de-densification is the way forward. On asking if the housing, the mass housing policies need to change, if we need to avoid a health crisis like the current one, there is a huge 91% say yes, mass housing policies from government and have to change. Another question about smart cities, that is smart city the way towards improving the living conditions of citizens? It's kind of a 50-50, but still majority of 60% say yes, smart cities will help improve living conditions. So these were the viewpoints of our viewers. But thank you all. As Shankar said, it's great to have all the panelists, all the experts on the on the panel and express their views. And rightly, this pandemic and the environmental catastrophes that we have seen, it has only highlighted. It's many say that it has broken the systems. I think they have highlighted the broken systems that were already there, and the change had to happen. All these crises have only accelerated the change. So that is, I think, what we are going to see in the times to come and the future cities to come. Thank you all for being here with us, for sharing your time and your views. And we, on that thank you note, we would like to conclude this session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shankar. Thank you for the wonderful moderation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye.